you so desire. Thanks for staying for the Q&A.
You guys like it?
Okay, so before I open it up, questions from the audience, I wonder, Tim, if you want to talk about, I imagine you spent a long time staring at the film through the edit. How did the experience change for you the first time you saw it in the theater? And if anyone else wants to, maybe has perspective on that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As I was editing the movie, there was numerous shootings going on in this country. And so it made the process at times very emotionally difficult, a lot of soul searching, but also we decided, Jeannie, my editor, and I decided to make it as relevant as possible. So Trainwreck, the shooting of Trainwreck Theater, Trainwreck showing happened while we were editing, so we put it in. We wanted it to feel as real as possible at the same time as this fictional process was happening. When I see it in the theater, I've seen it twice in the theater. This is the first time I've seen it in a theater, and I don't know, I was tense. I was really tense at the end. So if anyone wants from the crew, no one's seen this movie except for a couple people, so if anyone has any reactions. They're a cast.
What do you guys think?
Okay.
Could you introduce each other?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we go ahead?
My name's Alexandra Beyer, I'm the producer.
My name's Melissa, can you see?
Number?
Emma Hopkins. My name's Maddie, I was the production manager.
Morgan John Fox, I was AD. Castle Nebo, graphic design.
Me, Applegate, editor. I'm trying to run out and some music.
I'm Sebastian Avery from the art department.
Costume designer.
Tony Stapleton from Raymond College, associate producer. Bart Mango, production designer.
Amy Todd, production coordinator.
Joey Todd, art director. Soren Nielsen, first AC.
I think was there questions? Yeah, sure.
There were large portions of the film that felt really like found footage. Could you talk a little bit about creating those scenes and those sections of the film where there really is not a strong narrative structure, but just sort of us being introduced to the characters?
Sure. Well, I wanted the first bit of the movie. It is getting to know numerous characters in a short period of time, and I just wanted to show people what their morning routines were. Whether that's I don't really agree that that's non-narrative, but I would say it's just an introduction to people's mornings. The documentary style footage that maybe you're talking about as well, like the teenager with his mother, and other times where it seems like they're aware of the camera, or they're definitely aware of the camera, was produced as documentary. The idea was to have these little mini documentary moments feeding the larger fiction, so both feed off each other, and so you're not exactly sure if it's real what you're watching, or if it's surreal, or if it's fiction, or if it's documentary. I like fertile ground, and I like not knowing exactly where I am, as not knowing where I am, but I like, as a film goer, I like to not know exactly what's happening. I like to be in the world no matter what it is, and it's my goal to make a world as much as it is a story, so that you can sit in that world and kind of think about it for yourself.
Yeah, can I be
I'm curious what you think this film adds to the conversation about gun violence in this country.
because I couldn't discern what it was.
Well, it's not a gun control movie, and I'm not an expert on gun control. I'm not an expert on mental illness. What I think this does is adds a new lens, a different lens to the landscape that this country is in right now. It's as much about disconnection. It's as much about the screens. It's as much about isolation, and it's as much about that life is beautiful and we don't know it, that we're not aware of it. So it contributes to the conversation in a way that is not about data. It's not about facts and figures. It's about feeling something for these people and projecting your own lives onto these people up on the screen.
So, glad you actually said the word disconnection, because that's where I feel like America is failing right now. It's crazy to grow in selfies and all that stuff. I mean, that's kind of the day and age we live in, unfortunately. Everything is a hashtag, but I mean, I want to know from your opinion, what do you think we can do to help as a country, you know, as a world?
I mean, that's a humongous question, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate that this movie is in that conversation. This movie is not about answering questions. This movie is about, again, showing the landscape, showing the place we all live in, showing people we all know and we all care about, or we all have a recognition of, and feeling emotionally connected to these people who are isolated, and seeing them and feeling something, coming out of this movie theater and saying, I feel exhausted, or I feel scared, or I feel alone, or I feel frustrated, and to talk about it with someone. I mean, I'm trying to make movies that aren't disposable, that'll last as documents, and that we can keep going back to as a document of our time. That's the best I can do with this.
Yes. Yep.
Throughout the film, you showed that several of the characters had their own struggles. I think you hinted that they could have been, I guess, the shooter at the end, yet only one of them was the shooter. Was that part of your message, or is that?
Yeah, I think there's a long line of people right now waiting to do it next, and I wanted to show that, and how horrible that feels. Aaron, the teenager, is not the shooter now, but maybe 2 years from now he is. I'm not saying I know for sure, maybe he's just a troubled teenager. Maybe the vet is just a troubled vet. But the whole point is to play with our perception of stereotypes. You bring your view of people into this theater. So some people will see Aaron, the teenager, and think, oh, he's smothered by his mother, he's miserable, he's living in a fantasy world, he's the shooter. But meanwhile, maybe he's just a troubled teenager who's just miserable. But my point is that there's a 6 degrees of separation thing happening here, and that I wanted to show that if it's not now, maybe that kid's in waiting, or maybe someone else is in waiting, because I feel like that is happening right now in this country.
Yes.
I thought the cinematography was gorgeous. Can you talk about your decision on having so many one takes?
Yes, my cinematographer is not here. Her name is Hélène Louvard. She's in Paris with her family right now, but I just wanted to thank her. The decision, the film language is very specific. I think editing takes you out of a scene as much as possible. Cut, over the shoulder shot, establishing shot. I don't think in those terms. What I try to do is find one place to put the camera. That might be a moving place, or it might be a still place, where I can find one moment that really speaks. That it might take 2 minutes, it might take 30 seconds, it might take 10 seconds. But as long as it feels real, as long as it feels authentic, then I can move on to the next scene. I don't need coverage. I think coverage, I think some movies do great with coverage. I think my style of filmmaking depends on mastering that one angle.
I'd be interested to hear now on top of that, do you want to talk about the music, and is it a similar approach, or does that change for you when it comes to the music?
The music, I found Micah at, who's a tremendous musician, who moved me at, I saw her singing at a film festival in Montreal, and I was the only one on the floor, and I heard this woman singing. I went right up underneath her and listened to her sing, and I saw my movie for the first time. And so I knew right then that I wanted her music, but I wanted her in the movie. I just felt like it would be more holistic, and she would understand the characters and the landscape and the spirit of the crew and the cast and the story if she became part of the story. And so she recorded a lot of that music right off of, in a tiny, crappy bedroom, right off the set. But I'd love for Micah to talk a little bit if she'd like.
I think I remember the question, but I think I just, like, Tim contacted me and I didn't know who he was, and he showed me some of his films from the past, and I think those long scenes like that, yeah, the lack of editing was something I could really relate to in like this day and age with music where everything's just so like, oh, like not like techno, but like, it's just a lot of, yeah, just like the sparse. I just felt like his music his filming felt like what I would do if I was making movies instead or something. Similar.
I want to add also that the movie needs a narrator, and Mike is the narrator. I consider her a co-author of the film. She keeps, her music is both, is a mantra, it's a prayer, and it's a dark cloud all at once. And I think that it really helps connect this movie in a way that a voiceover would, in a more conventional story.
I'm going to go to you in the front first.
So in this film, you picked different storylines, different people, specifically certain walks of life in America. Can you talk about why you picked these people in these situations, whether that's the class, the race?
Sure.
in that terms?
I wanted it to look like a suburban America that I could relate to, that I read about, that I know, from my traveling, from my cousins, from wherever I go. The vet is a little bit different story because that was the one thing I took from Aurora. There were a lot of vets in that theater at Dark Knight Rises in Aurora, and it just horrified me that they're overseas and they come home and they get killed in the movie theater. It's just horrible. So I wanted a vet character. I wanted a selfie character who's a kind of a fitness freak because I was going through something in my own life, and that character is totally me. Anna does an amazing job being me. I wanted a troubled teenager. I wanted a young Latina who was trying to fit in maybe a different crowd. I wanted certain types of people, and I felt like we could relate to them. I live in Brooklyn. I didn't want to make a Brooklyn movie. I wanted to make something that had a bigger landscape and spoke to more people.
We have time for one more. I'm going to go to you.
I want to say congratulations to all of you for making a really tense and unnerving and beautiful and human film.
Thank you.
And I have a question that I hesitate to ask, but I wonder if you thought about, and I'm not suggesting in any way that you might inspire a kind of thing like this, but have you thought about?
Yeah, the thought horrifies me.
Because it's such an intense feeling watching it in the theater.
Yeah.
And knowing that moment's coming.
Yeah. I
I
know. I mean, I don't have an answer for that. For a long time when I was making the movie and writing the movie and then making the movie, I felt horrible for people who had been affected by gun violence. Because this movie is purposely neutral. It's observational. It's not saying yes or no to guns. It's just saying here are guns. And I felt horrible, and I felt like a survivor or a family member of someone who was killed should have the right to be really angry at me. And I can handle that. When I started to think about maybe copycat stuff, it horrifies me, and I think about that every day. It's there.
Let's give a final round of applause to